The complete work of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, Section 2, Karma Yoga, Chapter 3, The Secret of Work. Helping others physically by removing their physical needs is indeed great, but the help is great according as the need is greater, and according as the help is far reaching. If a man's want can be removed from for an hour, it is helping him indeed. If the wants are removed for a year, it will help him more. But if it is removed forever, it is surely the greatest help that can be given him. Spiritual knowledge is the only thing which can destroy our miseries forever. Any other knowledge satisfies wants only for a time being. It is only with the knowledge of the spirit that the faculty of want is inhalated forever. So, helping man spiritually is the highest help that can be given to him. He who gives that man spiritual knowledge is the greatest benefactor of mankind. And as we always find that those were the most powerful men who helped man in his spiritual needs. Because spirituality is the true base of all our activities in life. The spiritually strong and sound man will be strong in every other respect if he so wishes. Until there is a spiritual strength in a man, even physical needs cannot be satisfied well. Next to spiritual comes the intellectual help. The gift of knowledge is a far higher gift than that of food and clothes. It is even higher than giving life to the man, because the real life of man consists of knowledge. Ignorance of death, knowledge of life. Life is of very little value if it is a life in the darkness, grouping through ignorance and misery. Next in order comes, of course, helping a man physically. Therefore, in considering the question of helping others, we must always strive not to commit the mistake of thinking that physical help is the only help that can be given. It is not only the last but the least, because it cannot bring about permanent satisfaction. The misery that I feel when I'm hungry, is satisfied by eating, but the hunger returns. My misery can cease only when I am satisfied beyond all want. Then hunger will not make me miserable, no distress, no sorrow, will be able to move on. So, that help, which tends to make us strong spiritually, is the highest. Next to it comes intellectual help, and after the physical help. The miseries of the world cannot be cured by physical help only until man's nature changes. These physical needs will always arise and the miseries will always be felt, and no amount of physical help will cure them completely. The only solution of this problem is to make mankind pure. Ignorance is the mother of all evil and all the misery we have. Let men have light, let them be pure and spiritually strong and educate. Then only will misery cease in the world, not before that. We may convert every house of the country into a charity asylum. We may fill the land with the hospitals, but the misery of man will still continue to exist until man's character changes. We read in Bhagavad Gita again and again that we must all work incessantly. All work is by nature composed of good and evil. We cannot do any work which will not do some good somewhere. There cannot be any work which will not cause some harm somewhere. Every work must necessarily be a mixture of good and evil. Yet we are commanded to work incessantly. Good and evil will both be have their results, will produce their karmas. Good actions will attain upon a good effect, and bad actions bad. But good and bad are both bondage to the soul. The solution, the solution which is in the Gita is regarded is in regard to this bondage producing nature of the work is that if we do not attach ourselves to the work we do, it will not have any binding effect on our soul. We shall try to understand what is meant by this attachment, non attachment to work. This is the one central idea in the Gita. Work incessantly, but be not attached to it. Samskara can be translated very nearby inheritance tendencies. Using the simile of the lake of for the mind, every ripple, every wave that rises in the mind, when it subsides, does not die out entirely, but leaves a mark and a future possibility of that wave coming out again. This mark, with the possibility of wave reappearing, it is called as samskar. Every work that we do, every movement of our body, every thought that we think leaves such an impression on the mind stuff. And even when such impressions are not obvious on the surface, they are superficially strong to work beneath the surface, subconsciously. What we are ever movement is determined by the sum total of these impressions on the mind. What I am just at this moment is the fact of the sum total of all the impressions of the past life. This is really what is meant by character. Each man's character is determined by the sum total of these impressions. If good impressions prevail, the character becomes good. If bad, it becomes bad. If a man constantly hears bad words, thinks bad thoughts, does bad actions, his mind will be full of bad impressions and they will influence his thought and work without his being conscious of the fact. In fact, these bad impressions are always working and their resultants must be evil. And that man will be bad man. He cannot help it. The sum total of these impressions in him will create the strong motive power for doing bad actions. He will be like a machine in the hand of his impressions, and they will force him to do evil. Similarly, if a man thinks good thoughts and does good works, the sum total of this impression will be good, and they, in a similar manner, will force him to do good even in spite of himself. When a man has done so much good work and thought so many good thoughts that there is an irresistible tendency in him to be good, in spite of himself, and even if he wishes to do evil, his mind, as a sum total of his tendencies, will not allow him to do so. The tendencies will turn him back. He is completely under the influence of the good tendencies. When such in case a man good's character is said to be established, as the tortoise tucks its feet and head inside the shell, and you will may kill it and break it in pieces, and yet it will not come out. Even so, the character of that man who has control over his emotions or motives and organs is unchangeably established. He controls his own inner forces, and nothing can draw them out against his will. By this continuous reflex of good thoughts, good impressions moving over the surface of the mind, the tendencies for good, doing good, becoming strong, and as a result, we feel able to control the indriyas, that is, the sense organs. Thus, alone will character be established, then alone a man gets to truth. Such a man is safe forever. He cannot do any evil. You may place him in any company, there will be no danger for him. There is a still higher state than having these good tendencies, and that is the desire for liberation. You must remember that freedom of the soul is the goal of all yogas, and each one equally leads to the same result. By working alone, men may get to where Buddha got largely by meditating or Christ by praying. Buddha was a working Jain, Christ was a Bhakta, but the same goal was reached by both of them. The difficulty is here. Liberation means entire freedom, freedom from bondage of good as well as bondage of evil. A golden chain is and has much a chain as an iron one. There is thorn in my finger, and I use another to take the first one out. And when have taken it out, I throw both of them aside. I have no necessity for keeping the second thorn because both are thorns after all. So the bad tendencies are to be counter-reacted by the good ones, and the bad impressions on mind should be removed by fresh waves of good ones until all that is evil almost disappear or is subdued and held in control in a corner of the mind. But after that the good tendencies have also be conquered. Thus the attachment attached becomes unattached. Unattached. Work, but let not the action or the thought produce a deep impression on the mind. Let the ripples come and go. Let huge actions proceed from the muscle and the brain. Let them not make any deep impressions on the soul. How can this be done? We see that the impressions of any action of which we attach ourselves and remains. May meet hundreds of persons during the day, and among them meet also one whom I love. And when I retire at night, I may try to think of all the faces I saw, but only that face comes before my mind. The face which I met perhaps only for 1 minute, and which I love. All the others have vanished. My attachment to this particular person causes a deep impressions on my mind than all the other faces. Physiologically, the impressions have all been the same. Every one of the faces that I saw pictured itself on the retina, and the brain took the picture in. And yet there was no similarity of effect upon the mind. Most of the faces, perhaps, were entirely few faces, about which I had never thought before. But that one face of which I got only the glimpse found association inside. Perhaps I had pictured him in my mind for years, knew hundred of things about him, and this one new vision of him awakened hundred of sleeping memories in my mind. This one impression having been ripped perhaps 100 times more than those of different faces together, will produce a great effect on the mind. Therefore, be unattached, let things work, let brain center work incessantly, but let not a ripple conquer the mind. Work as if you were a stranger in this land. Work incessantly, but do not bind yourself. Bondage is terrible. This world is not our habitations. It is only one of the many stages through which we are passing. Remember that the great saying of Sankhya, the whole of nature is for the soul, not the soul for the nature. The very reason of nature's existence is for the education of the soul, and it has no other meaning. It is there because the soul must have knowledge, and through knowledge free itself. If we remember this always, we shall never be attached to nature. We shall know that nature is the book in which we are to read, and that when we have gained the required knowledge, the book is of no more values to us. Instead of that, however, we are identifying ourselves with the nature. We are thinking that the soul is for nature and that the spirit is for the flesh. And as a common saying has it, we think that men live to eat and not eat to live. We are continuously making the mistake. We are regarding nature as ourself and are becoming attached to it. And as soon as this attachment comes, there is a deep impression on the soul which binds us down and makes us work not from freedom but like slaves. The whole gist of teaching is that you should work like a master, not like a slave. Work incessantly, but do not do slaves' work. Do you not see how everyone works? Nobody can be together altogether at rest. 99% of mankind work like slaves, and the result is misery. It is all selfish work. Work through freedom, work through love, work. The word love is very difficult to understand. Love never comes until there is freedom. There is no true love possible in a slavery. If you buy a slave and tie him down in chain and make him work for you, he will work like a drudge, but there will be no love in him. So when we ourselves work for the things of the world as slaves, there can be no love in us, and our work is not true love, true work. This is true of work done for relatives and friends, and the true of work done for our own self. Selfish work is slaves' works, and here is a test. Every act of love brings happiness, and there is no act of love which does not bring peace and bliss. Blessed, blessedness has its reaction. Real existence, real knowledge, real love are eternally connected with one another. The three is one, where one of them is, the other also must be there. They are the three aspects of the one without the second, the existence, knowledge, and bliss. When that existence becomes relative, we see it as the world. The knowledge becomes in its turn modified into a knowledge of the things of the world, and the bliss forms the foundation of the all true love known to the heart of man. Therefore, true love can never react so as to cause pain either to the lover or to the beloved. Suppose a man loves a woman, he wishes to have her all to himself and feels extremely jealous about her. Every moment he wants her to sit near him, to stand near him, to eat and move at his bidding. He is a slave to her and wishes to have her as his slave. That is not love. It is a kind of morbid affection of the slave, insinuating itself as love. It cannot be love because it is painful. If she does not do what he wants, it brings him pain. With love, there is no painful reaction. Love only brings a reaction of bliss. If it does not, it is not love. It is a mistaking something else for love. When you have succeeded in loving your husband, your wife, your children, the whole world, the universe, in such a manner that there is no reaction of pain or jealousy, no selfish feeling, then you are in the fit state of unattachment. Krishna says, look at me, Arjun. If I stop from working for one moment, the whole universe will die. I have nothing to gain from work. I am the one Lord. But why do I work? Because I love the world. God is unattached because he loves. That the real love makes us unattached. Wherever there is attachment, the clinging of the of the world, you must know that it is all physical attraction between set of particles of matter, something that attracts two bodies nearer and nearer all the time, and if they cannot get near enough produces pain. But where there is real love, it does not rest on the physical attachment at all. Such lovers may be 1,000 miles away from one another, but their love will be all the same. It does not die and will never produce any painful reaction. To attain this unattachment, it's almost a life work, but as soon as we have reached this point, We have attained the goal of love and become free. The bondage of nature falls from us, and we see nature as she is. She forges no more chains for us. We stand entirely free and take not take not the results of work into consideration. Who then cares for what the results may be? Do you ask anything from your children in return for what you have given them? It is your duty to work for them, and there the matter ends. In whatever you do for a particular person, a city, a state, assume the same attitude towards it as you have towards your children. Expect nothing in return. If you can invariably take the position of the giver, in which everything given by you is a free offering to the world without any thought of return, then you will then will your work bring you no attachment. Attachment comes only where we expect a return. If walking like a slave results in selfishness and attachment, walking as a master of our own mind gives rise to a bliss of attachment, non attachment. We often talk of right and just, but we find that in the world, right and just are merely baby talk. There are two things which guide the conduct of man: might and mercy. The exercise of might is invariably the exercise of selfishness. All men and women try to make the most of whatever power or advantages they have. Mercy is heaven itself, to be good. We have all to be merciful. Even just and right must stand on mercy. All thought of obtaining return for the work we do hinders our spiritual progress. Nay, in the end, it brings misery. There is another way in which this idea of mercy and selfish charity can be put into practice. That is, by looking upon work as worship. In case we believe in a personal God, here we give up all the fruits of our work unto the Lord, and worshipping Him thus, we have no right to expect anything from mankind for the work we do. The Lord Himself works saintly and in ever without attachment. Just as water cannot wet the lotus leaves, so work cannot bind the unselfish man by giving rise to attachment to result. The selfish and unattached man may live in the very heart of the crowd and sinful city. He will not be touched by sin. This idea of complete self-sacrifice is illustrated in the following story. After the battle of Kurukshetra, the five Pandavas brothers performed a great sacrifice and made very large gift to the poor. All the people expressed amazement at the greatness and riches of the sacrifices, and said that such a sacrifice the world has never seen before. But after the ceremony, there came a little mongoose, half of whose body was golden and the other half brown. He began to roll on the floor of the sacrificial hall. He said to those every around, "You are all liars. This is no sacrifice." What, they exclaimed, "you say this is no sacrifice. Do you know how money and jewel were poured out of the poor? Everyone became rich and happy. This was the most wonderful sacrifice any man ever performed. But the mongoose said, "There was once a little village, and in it there dwelled a poor Brahmin with his wife, his son, and his son's wife. They were very poor and lived on a small gifts made to them for preaching and teaching. There came in that land a 3 years famine, and the poor Brahman suffered more than ever. At last, when the family had starved for days, the father brought home one morning a little barley flour, which he had been fortunately enough to obtain, and he divided into four parts, one of each family member of the family. They prepared it for their meal, and just as they were about to eat, their was a knock on the door. The father opened it, and there stood a guest. Now, in India, a guest is a sacred person. He is has a god for the time being and must be treated as. So the poor Brahmin said, "Come on, come in, sir. You are welcome." He set before the guest his own portion of food, which guest quickly ate and said, "Oh, sir, you have killed me. I have been starving for 10 days, and this little bit has been but increased my hunger." Then the wife said to her husband, "Give him my share." But the husband said, "Not so." The wife, however, insisted, saying, "Here a poor man, and it is our duty as a householders to see that he is fed. It is my duty as the wife to give him my portion." Saying that, you have no more to offer him. Then she gave her share to the guest, which he ate and said he was still burning with the hunger. So the son said, "Take my portion also. It is my duty as a son to help his father for fulfilling obligations." The guest ate that, but remained still unsatisfied. So the son's wife gave him her portion also. That was sufficient, and the guest departed, blessed them. That night, those four people died of starvation. A few granules of that flour had fallen on the ground, on the floor, and when I rolled my body on them, half of it became gold. As you see, since then I have been traveling all over the world hoping to find another sacrifice like that, but nowhere have I found one. Nowhere else has the other half of my body been turned into gold. That is why I say this is no sacrifice. This idea of charity is going out of India. Great men are becoming fewer and fewer. When I was first learning English, I read an English storybook in which there was a story about a dutiful boy who had gone out to work and had given some of his money to his old mother, and his this was praised in 3 or 4 pages. What was that? No Hindu boy can ever understand the moral of that story. Now I understand it when I hear the Western idea. Every man for himself, and some men take some everything for themselves. The fathers and mothers and wives, our children go to the wall. That should never and nowhere be the idea of the household. Now you see what karma yoga means. Even at the point of death, to help anyone without asking question. Be cheated millions of times and never ask a question. And never think of what you are doing. Never want vault of your gifts to the poor and expect their gratitude, but rather be grateful to them for giving you the occasion to practice charity to them. Thus, it is the plain it is plain that to be an ideal householder, it is a much more difficult task than to be an ideal sannyasi. The true life of work is indeed as hard as, if not harder than, the equally true life of renunciation.